here we go. 17. So other things about, like, deflection and how they muddy up the argument and stuff is you can even you look at 9/11. Lots of people know there's something that wasn't right, that it wasn't what we were told, and a lot of people can't quite put their finger on it, and you have wild conspiracies out there, and then you have an awful lot of stuff that makes sense. And one of the things I realized during when I was looking back at it and everything, there's a lot that the government does that's like hocus pocus. Look over here while we're doing something over there. So, like, the night before 9/11, you had Rumsfeld talk about the $2 trillion and stuff like that. Well, so a lot of people, after 9/11, they're like, that's why it was hit. That could have been, just they put 1,000 possible, deals out there so that you don't find the true one. You see what I'm kind of saying, and then they like, you look at when people were starting to question certain things, then all of a sudden he had Condoleezza Rice before the Senate, and they're going you had this report and this and that, and why wasn't something done and all this, and she's like, well, no one could expect, and even Bush was saying no one could expect anyone to run planes into buildings and stuff, and the senator's like, he says, what was the name of the report again? And she goes, Bin Laden plans to use airplanes in an attack. And so then he goes, and why wasn't nothing done? She's like, well, no one could expected that type of thing. And so he's like, what was the name of the report? So it was kind of comical, but stuff like that. That to me, that was a deflection. They were like, yeah, so what? We'll look like idiots. We'll look like, because then everyone's running around, Bush knew and didn't do nothing. Bush knew and didn't do. So they kind of, it's that wag the dog thing. They throw the argument out there and everybody jumps on it like a bone and runs with it. And, especially the opposition news, which they're probably in on anyway. Hey, we're going to put this story out there really late on, and so a lot of them, they throw the bone out there, everyone jumps on it, and then the opposition, pulls the string and pulls the bone along and keep everybody following it. There's a lot of stuff they do, is deflection, and they put, all these possibilities out there, it's to keep you from figuring out the real truth. And, you can look at JFK's assassination. How many different conspiracies are there and tie-ins to CIA and everything else with that. And it's like that movie that what's his name made, the JFK movie, with Joe Pesci in it, and he's like, man, it's a lie and an enigma and wrapped in an enigma and wrapped in this, and it's like, you'll never know, and that's what they do. When there's something really, they make it impossible, to exactly know. For number one, they don't want anybody to exactly know, because they're covering their asses, from the things they've done. They don't want to be tried and convicted for the things they've done. And then so anyway, one of the things done back then after, is, they gave themselves, like Cheney and Bush testified, but wasn't recorded and was behind closed doors, all this and everything, and all these things happened. They gave they passed the laws where the government could lie. They started where the CIA and the military and stuff, make their own news stories and hand them over to the broadcast networks, and it's a canned prepackaged news story, and they give it to them. And Bush was asked about, what about this? And then Bush was like, well, no one they don't have to put it on, and if they don't put a disclaimer on, it's that's, you need to talk to them about it, and so you have all these things, they're making these stories and giving themselves permission to lie to the people and stuff. So there, you can tell right there, it's a deceptive time, and the people, I know there's a lot of good people in America that aren't hateful people, and it's a lot of the corruption is just at the top, and when you have a lot of manipulation, and and you have a lot of people who don't take the time to understand. I mean, we can all be victims of our emotions and our prejudices and things like that. And you have people like, preachers like John Hagee stoking the fires, and a lot of people just kind of kill them all, of God, so order them out and everything. Well, that's probably Gog and Magog's probably going to talk like that, because they're going to kill everybody on the earth. So, you got to really question what direction you're going in sometimes, or what direction the country's going in, and why we think and do things the way we do. How much of it is manipulation and that goes for not just this type of stuff, but for everything. I mean, you look at the correlation between violent rap music and the gangs and the killings going on and stuff, where there's a lot of things that influence. Now, I'm not just saying rap. You can look at rock and roll music, how much drug use and sex, drugs, rock and roll and stuff influenced white kids into doing stuff that's wrong, or even country music. There's certain things in the world that that they build you into this persona and stuff of, what how you should be, or they give you this is the way you should be, whether it's grow your hair long and smoke weed, or put a big cowboy hat on and some boots and drink beer. You have all these examples and stuff that are given to you to, and it's all the distraction and deflection, to keep you from the truth. That's one of the things about music. One of the Islamic like Salafi, or the Wahhabs and stuff. He said definitely, music is prohibited because it attracts the jinn and stuff and everything. But it also it's a distraction for people, and you run around instead of memorizing the Quran and scriptures and stuff. You can memorize all these songs and stuff, but you're not memorizing the things you're supposed to memorize. And it can have an effect. How many people do you know who had a bad relationship or something like that, or had a song with somebody, and every time that song comes on, they get all depressed now and stuff and everything. So you can see how music can kind of control you, and that's one of the things in the Hadith. Also, one of the Hadiths was something. They will wear their music on their head, So you look at from the Walkman to now to the earbuds and all this and everything. So that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is as a way of manipulation. Could be types of like hats too. Like you look at the popes and all them, they wear you're gonna dance to their music now because now you perceive them as holy men, or maybe other people in the end times, the followers of that Antichrist. I'm sure he's going to have a whole bunch of like priests or rabbis or something around him and stuff, and they're probably going to be adorned a certain way too. So, you can take that either, the literal actual music upon their heads is, being the earphones and stuff, or you can look for the, what's the ambiguous or symbology or symbolic meanings for things too. Sometimes they're both. But So, and then one of the Shia scholars also said a man was music was coming from his house, whether he was singing or banging a drum or some kind of stringed instrument, I don't know. And one of the imams was walking by, and so he went in and said, who's doing that and this and that, and he told the man, he said, why are you disrespecting Allah? So, and I know in the Islamic world, there's, you have the whirling dervish, and stuff. I'm sure there's music going while they're doing their thing, and there's been great, Arab musicians and stuff, even in rock and roll. If Robert Plant and Jimmy Page, they've done a lot of things with, like musicians from Egypt and Morocco and all these types of things. So, you could say, that's people that are taking too much liberty, or, I'm sure they have their reasons where maybe they say no, there was no prohibition against it. And so that's something needs more looking into. But at this point, everything I play, it's better to be safe than sorry. So, until, that's why I want to learn what the imams had to say about things, because that's one way to be sure. Because if anyone was going to know, whether it's the Sunnah or Hadith or anything, it most definitely would have been Ali, and then his sons after him. So, may Allah be well pleased with them all. So that's why I say we have to go back. You have to follow the oldest chains and most verifiable chains of narration, and that's why I believe the Shia and the 12 imams, because that's what makes sense, is that they would be, especially since they say the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, named them, and that he chose Ali. And if he chose Ali, that means Allah chose Ali, because no prophet ever did anything of his own, so, and so now, as far as, whatever other kinds of practice Shia do, I cannot, vouch for. One, I don't know them all, and two, I don't have the knowledge, well versed in knowledge enough now to know whether some things are right or wrong anyway, if they're okay to do, or if it was part of the Sunnah. So that's part of my, wanting to study more. But I do believe the imams, the descendants of the Prophet, would be the best keepers of the Sunnah. And for those of you who don't know what Sunnah is, that's where Sunni get their things. It was the exact practices of the Prophet on how he prayed, how he, did everything. So, anyway, going back to like timelines and things like that. One example a lot of Christians would give against abortion and stuff is, is they'd say, how do you know that, that baby wouldn't be the scientist or doctor that figures out how to cure cancer or this and that? And it's a valid argument. But then the same people are gung-ho for, dropping bombs, or, let's go nuke them and stuff like that. Same people that are against abortion or, talk like that. So, it's like, well, how do you know them kids that would die from that nuke or from bombing people and stuff, wouldn't be the next scientist to put an end to cancer? So there's a lot of our actions, kind of goes in almost like a time travel. There's a lot of our actions that affect the future in ways we never dreamed of, possibly. That's one of the things, we all know that God, Allah, is the giver of life, and he takes your life. That's why suicide is in all religions is a bad sin, that you're changing what was ordained. You might be ordained to live 80 years or something, and then you go and kill yourself when you're 40 or something. There's 40 years of your life that might have affected a great deal of things, and not only that, but you just went against your Lord, and took your own life when you weren't supposed to. So you got to think about, okay, if we know that could change things and stuff, but there's also corruption could change things. Now, I don't know. I'm not saying the world would be any different, or I'm sure certain things are going to happen regardless. If society keeps going downhill and more corrupt and more sinful, then wars are kind of they're let to happen, and stuff, and disasters and stuff happen to make people think about how helpless we are. And we're helpless. We don't like to think of ourselves as helpless, but we are helpless as a bunch of ants on the ground that you step on. When you look at this world, we could be wiped out in a heartbeat. We are helpless. Our technology's not going to save us. Nothing's going to. I mean, there's a line in that the latest last Godzilla movie where the guy goes, it's man's arrogance to think he controls nature, or something like that. Can control nature, or something like that. Well, it's man's arrogance to think we can control anything. We're helpless. And so, like, when you see the things happen like earthquakes, or the tsunami in Japan and things, and people are like, oh my God, and stuff. How can some people, like atheists, how can you say there's a God, look what happened there, and blah blah and stuff. And it's like, some of these things are allowed to happen so that we realize we're helpless, that we might turn to our Creator, and a lot of people do, and it takes a dire time or something for them to look for help, and from like the only one who can give it to them. So Jesus, peace be upon him, goes into that in the Gospel of Barnabas, about how this world is compared to paradise, where none of those types of things happen, and that some of these things happen so that we can remember where we came from and be like, as many blessings as we receive from Allah in this world, that and how beautiful it is and stuff, it's not paradise. Paradise, you don't have insects that can bite you and kill you, and you don't have beasts that'll eat you, and you don't have all kinds of types of diseases, and you don't have natural disasters, and you don't have pain and suffering and all that, and here you do. And so it's how are you going to know to look for what's good until you realize hey, this isn't perfect down here, and we're helpless. So anyhow, I hope that gives people a better perception on that. But in going with timelines and stuff, I was thinking, about how people say about abortion, well, how do you know this or that. That child might not grow up to do this or that. And, well, same thing when you kill people and stuff. And then I start thinking about, corruption. Well, what if you fix an election? It's like people say, what if you had the chance, you could travel back in time and kill Hitler, odds are, you don't know if you'd got somebody worse, so that's the thing. So I was looking, with all the deception and everything, you can go back, you can watch that movie Fahrenheit 9/11. Now I know a bunch of people just, see, he's one of them liberals. He watches that nut jobs movies and stuff, but there's a lot in that movie that isn't so crazy. But and you look at that election night was strange. You gotta, they're talking about Trump and the Russians and possibility of tampering with stuff and everything. Well, this ain't the first one. First one in recent history was Gore and Bush. You go back and you watch Dan Rather on that night giving the coverage, and I'm telling you what, it's like, is this guy drunk or what? I mean, he was just, the things he was saying and kind of, going back and forth, and it's like, what is going on? And then Al Gore, steps aside sort of, and people say, he could have fought it and won, and that there was you had the ballots that were where they tampered with, where this and that and everything. So you got to kind of wonder. We know Al Gore believes there is global warming and stuff, but you got to kind of wonder if he had become president. Would he have, if you attribute all this to Bin Laden and stuff, 9/11 to Bin Laden and stuff, because he had done other attacks and stuff, and but Clinton really didn't go after him. But you gotta think, would Gore have got him? Would 9/11 have ever happened? So that's, you wonder, if they're tampering with elections and stuff, and they're doing corruption that way. It's kind of like, you go back to the thing about abortion, you don't know what what are you doing? You're changing, you're killing that kid, that baby, he might be the next person to cure cancer. Well, you're changing that election. That guy might have been able to keep us out of a war. So, and believe me, trust me, I don't follow either party, and I just, there's a lot of, you can look at Trump now, is he just talking to talk, and because people know there's a bunch of corruption in DC and want it cleaned up. I mean, because the day after 9/11, he was on TV saying there were bombs in those buildings. That was demolition. They had to have had bombs in those buildings for them to fall like that. Never heard him say anything about it during the election. Haven't heard him say anything about it now, or about he's going to do an investigation or anything. But if he believed that wholeheartedly back then and during that interview, he was passionate about it in the way he sounded. There were bombs in those buildings, is what he was saying. You can go look it up. It's still on YouTube, and you probably just Google it or whatever and see the news programs and stuff. But that's what he was saying. There were bombs in those buildings. So why hasn't he done anything? He's president now. If he believes there was bombs in those buildings, if there was bombs in those buildings, there's no way it was just terrorists, Jack. There ain't no way it was just terrorists. So that's a linchpin right there. If there was explosives in those buildings, there was more to it than what we were told. So, we hope, each president, you hope they all talk a good game. Hope there's going to be some positive change, things done. And so, Trump's in there, and he's talking about fake news. Well, you go back and when you watch that news, that press conference with Bush when the guy asked him. He said, "Hey, the CIA and the military are giving the news agencies these pre-made news stories and stuff. What do you think about that?" So there's fake news there. So if Trump is really out to clean house and he's going to be a straight shooter and stuff and everything, you gotta pray for him and hope he has a brass set. Because there's the things they've done in the world, this shadow government or whatever, these intelligence agencies from here in Israel and stuff. There's nothing beyond them. And it's kind of like the mafia. Once you're a made man, you're up there and no one's going to talk because everyone has dirt on everybody, and you're guilty and you're going to go to prison or whatever. That's how could people keep 9/11? If there's a government inside job in this, how can you keep so many people quiet? They're keeping quiet because it's their own ass. You have to understand that. If they were in on it, they were in on committing murder and treasonous act, attacking their own country. So, they're not going to be, the first one to jump up and say, yeah, this is how we did it, because it's their ass, and plus, there's a lot of money, $2 trillion is missing from the defense budget, which we don't hear anything about anymore. Where'd that money go? Night before 9/11, hey, there's $2 trillion missing from the defense coffers. Since then, has anybody found that money? Anybody been charged with anything to do with that money? Anybody remember hear anything about that money? I don't. So, $2 trillion buys an awful lot of shut up, So, I'm sure there's a lot of people who got rich. You can look at what happened with the stock market and the airline stocks and all these other things that happened around 9/11. So anyway, but that's, I was thinking about timelines and stuff, what if Gore had won? Would 9/11 have ever happened? Would he have stopped? And even if 9/11 happened, would we have gone into Iraq? Would he have been, part of this new world order stuff too and everything? But you can see now he's out there, he's showing, he got another movie out about global warming and stuff. And I know everybody mocks him. I think the guy's sincere about it. But as for the reasons for all this going on, I don't think anyone has a grip on it actually yet. And like I said, in the end, when if this is the end times and stuff, well, we know from reading the Book of Revelations why these climatic changes will happen on a grand scale. If we're not, then maybe this is something a wake up call. Our Lord is making us understand that we're helpless. Helpless as can be. I know science will point out, well, we're helpless as can be if a big meteor comes and hits us, and and the like deep impact and all that and everything, and in that respect, they make you, well, we haven't been hit by one yet, but the odds are that we could be wiped out in, this and that. So people really don't think about stuff like that, though. I mean, but when an earthquake or tsunami or something, or something close to home happens, those types of things hopefully will wake people up to the fact they're helpless and they need their creator. And that's like that line in that movie, the Godzilla movie, man's arrogance is thinking he controls nature, or can control nature, or something like that. But anyway, you look at all the types of other things in the Book of Revelations, the locusts and the famines and things like that, and you look at how they're messing with food and genetics and all these types of things they shouldn't be messing with. And then again, or even like them conspiracy theories. They talk about the chemtrails, plane spraying stuff in the atmosphere. Here's another thing that I think people will might play a part in in the end is there's those oh in Iraq or Mesopotamia. There you had the what they call them, Anunnaki or whatever, or what the people were anyway. They said there was and you see this on the History Channel, Ancient Aliens and stuff and everything. I watch it to see, where these other cultures and stuff were. And I know the verse in the Quran about civilizations that were destroyed. So when they say that, they find this ancient civilization and everything, I watch to see about that. But, how they tie it into, did aliens, this and that. Well, we know the jinn, even King Solomon, may Allah be pleased with him, had control over the jinn and stuff, and had them build things and stuff. So there's no telling these ancient cultures and things, what black arts or things they were into. Not that Solomon was just given control and the wisdom to use that control. There's people still look for like his ring or something, that'll give them control, or there's in the Jewish Kabbalist stuff, they have enchantments and stuff that's supposed to have angels or the demons do things for people, and people get involved into all that kind of stuff. That's Aleister Crowley was into that kind of stuff, and so it's just a dark road to go down. But so there's no telling what these ancient cultures were into and were doing. But like in the Quran, it says, dig through the earth and see those who have gone before you. Do you think you're mightier than they were? And those who have been destroyed before you. And you go back, every almost, seems like almost every couple of years now, they're finding, another archaeological dig, where they're going, whoa, wait a minute, this takes civilization back even further than what we thought it went, and or these, people were more advanced back then than what we thought, So one of the things is, so supposedly the according to the Zachariah and Sitchin guy, these aliens made us hybrids and stuff to mine gold for them so they could take, and their world was being destroyed, because they didn't have enough gold in their atmosphere to protect them from their sun and stuff. So I have no doubt that when people who read the Book of Revelations and stuff, say, well, the sun's going to do this or that, and then you get scientists that probably figure, they probably have people working on ways, well, what could that be from, and this and that. So let's do this to try and protect ourselves from it. So I have no doubt that when these things are happening, they'll be spraying all kinds of stuff up in the atmosphere, or maybe that's why they're doing it now. Is hey, we're going to get hit by this type of thing. Let's it's kind of like Noah built the flood, or built the ark, before the flood and stuff. So they're going to be like, well, if he built an ark to survive the flood and stuff, we can do this in the end times to survive this. And and they already got seed banks and things like that around the world and stuff, so they're making plans. I mean, they know this stuff's, whether they admit it or not. I'm sure there's governments that look at it and say, if this does happen, what's it going to mean? We got to do something. So I'm sure they're have no doubt in the end they'll deflect and say it's from all these other things, and NASA will say this and that, and they'll say, well, we got to send this up, and we got to do this, and we got to do these other types of things. So that's why I say you need the scriptures, and you need to look to your Creator, because I mean there's all kinds of stuff going on in the world now, and that's gonna come, and with mass media and the bombardment of ideas and stuff on people all around the world, I have no doubt that when things start happening, there'll be 1,000 different things out there, like with 9/11, they'll throw 1,000 things at the wall, to have you be looking at. So, and to keep you from the true reason. So, all right, that's just another thing to think about. I'm sure they'll try and equate with the that race to Anunnaki or whatever it was, that hey, there was something happened to their atmosphere, and they put gold up there and everything, to keep the sun from burning them, and so maybe they'll come up with something like that, for us, but anyway, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. And assalamu alaikum to y'all out there. If you're going to be a prepper and prep for the end times, make sure you get scriptures and several copies of all the scriptures, so that you can here comes security through here, so that you can know the truth and preserve the truth for any future generations that might survive, because maybe it's not the exact end, but maybe there's a big period where a whole bunch of us are wiped out and technology fails, and people maybe that gives the nations that need to have the power in the end the ability to overpower everybody else and force the will of the Antichrist on people. So anyhow, more to prepping than just guns and ammo and MREs. Okay. Don't forget medical books and things like that. We need to preserve knowledge. All right. Assalamu alaikum. Y'all have a good one. And I think this will do it so far on all this subject, unless I find something new out. All right. Adios.